channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
I'm Alice Porter in the GB newsroom. The Foreign Secretary will accuse Iran of spreading bloodshed and destruction as he reaffirms Britain's determination to prevent the country from acquiring a nuclear weapon. In an address to the Security Conference in Bahrain, James Cleverly will tomorrow warn that Iranian-supplied weapons are threatening security in the Middle East and beyond. Earlier this week, the UK imposed a fresh round of sanctions on Iranian officials after a brutal crackdown on anti-government protesters, which has seen a number of people sentenced to death. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has accused the government of locking the country into an economic doom loop. The comments follow the Chancellor's autumn statement yesterday. Meanwhile, the Institute for Fiscal Studies is warning the fall in living standards will be the largest since records began. Jeremy Hunt has defended his plans as the right thing to do, but Sir Keir says the fiscal measures will hurt the most vulnerable.
The government yesterday, having done huge damage to the economy, has gone after working people again with stealth taxes and council tax increases and done nothing about non-dom status, the super rich who are not paying their taxes in this country. And they've got no plan for growth, so they're locking us in a doom loop. We would have put a plan for growth on the table that actually runs towards the challenges of tomorrow.
A sexual predator has admitted to the murder of law graduate Zara Alina, who was brutally kicked and stamped on, then left for dead. Jordan McSweeney also admitted to sexually assaulting Zara Alina as she walked home from a night out in East London last summer. The 35-year-old from Dagenham was found by passers-by with severe head injuries. She later died in hospital. McSweeney had only recently been released from prison and had targeted more than one woman before. Detective Chief Inspector Dave Wellams says the Met Police are committed to tackling violence against women.
Jordan McSweeney has pleaded guilty today to the most serious offences. He is clearly a very dangerous individual, and his guilty plea today means that he is certain to serve a considerable period of time behind bars.
A person has been swept into the River Don in Aberdeenshire as heavy rain continues to batter much of eastern Scotland. Police and emergency crews are on the scene, where it's believed the person may have been trying to rescue a dog. Rest centres have opened after flood warnings were escalated to severe. Aberdeenshire Council say river levels will peak later this evening. Civil servants in the Home Office, Border Force, Department for Transport and DEFRA are to take industrial action in a dispute over pay. The PCS union has been calling for a 10% pay rise for its members, but this was rejected by the government. It's planning 1 month of what it calls sustained industrial action from mid-December, which will affect ports, borders and other areas of transport. King Charles has banned foie gras in royal residences. He's understood to have been a long-standing opponent of the pâté made from the liver of a duck or goose. The King's household wrote to the Peter campaign group saying that foie gras was not bought or served in royal residences. Peter is also campaigning for the King to forego ermine fur robes for his coronation next year. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to headliners.
Thanks, Alice. I'm Mark Dolan, and this is Headliners, your first look at tomorrow's papers. Tonight, as always, in the company of two top comedians. Tonight, making his Headliners debut is the hugely talented Anthony Ayton.
Hello.
And the big dog himself, Headliners legend Nick Dixon.
That's what they call me.
You know what? You're too young to be a legend, because being a legend, that puts years on you, doesn't it?
Young legend.
There you go. A legend in his own lunchtime. Let's have a look at tomorrow's papers, and we start with the Daily Mail, and they lead with fan fury as Qatar royals ban beer. The Daily Telegraph, Sunak, my fears for safety of women, and council tax bills set to double for second homeowners. The iWeekend, Treasury warns that Number 10 plan to cut migration to UK will mean higher taxes. The Guardian, guards at World Cup Park are paid 35p an hour. FT weekend, Tory MPs hit out at Hunt's tax rises amid fears of election rout. The Daily Mirror World Cup shocker. They think it's all sober. It is now. Fans' fury at last-minute stadium booze ban in Qatar. The Times Met Chief. It should be easier to sack police. And last but not least, the Daily Star. Smooth finishers. Here we go, here we go, here we go. This is a good one for you, Anthony.
Thank you.
World Cup stars waxing legs to cope with the heat. That's their story, and they're sticking to it. And those are your front pages. Well, Nick, let's start with Saturday's Daily Mail. Another story also featured in the Mirror. Let's have a look at that.
Yeah, the Mail's got fan fury as Qatar Royals ban beer. The Mirror's gone with a slightly more fun variant. They think it's all sober. Quite clever there, Mark. Bit of
I
a
think
pun.
it's headline of the day.
It is, yeah. Did
you write it?
Thank you. I didn't, Mark, but I appreciate it because it's the kind of thing I would come up with. But yeah, it's about the ban on beer, and all you can get is Bud Zero, which is like even worse than normal Budweiser because it still tastes bad, but it has no alcohol either.
Isn't Bud Zero stronger than regular Bud?
Yeah, I think so, a little bit. But
tap water is stronger, isn't it?
And or you can go in the only other place you'll be able to drink is the official fan festival centre in Doha, where you'll be able to get a Bud at £12 for less than a pint. And what people are really annoyed about is the U-turn. It's not just the not drinking, it's that they said you'd be able to drink in the stadiums. Now, 48 hours before kick-off, you suddenly can't. And so obviously people are going mad, because especially English people, because we like to drink. That's our football culture. And again, it's another tension of the Qatar World Cup. It's like, should you be allowed to, bring your own culture, or do we have to follow the Qatari rules? And in this case, we're going to have to follow their rules. It looks like it was very similar in a way to that thing with the Danish film crew. Did you see that, where they were trying to film, then people came up to them and said, you can't film, we're going to smash your camera. So it's like, and they said, well, look, you've invited the world here, which is it? So it's another one of these tensions. Although they do have a sex ban, which we'll get onto later, which I'm more in approval of, because you're not allowed to have sex unless you're married in Qatar during the World Cup, but we can get onto that later.
Yes, attacking Western journalists, banning booze, banning sex as well, apparently. The Qatari regime are having trouble with the rebrand, aren't they, Anthony?
I do, but I think it's a bit of a storm in the teacup, really, because you're talking about a football match. You've gone there to watch football. That's what you should be focusing on.
Speak for yourself, Anthony.
OK, well,
I'm a season ticket here at White Hart Lane. Right?
Well, yeah. for the today, I'm going to speak for the whole nation. You go there to watch the football. It's 90 minutes. You're telling me that you can't find your way around enjoying the football and then drink somewhere else, if you have to, when you're back at the hotel or in some...
England fans, do you think they can do that? I'm not sure. Yeah. When you said storm in a teacup, was that a pun on teetotal?
Absolutely,
it's a storm in a Bud Zero.
Yeah, that would do it.
They did also point out, further down in that article, because they were complaining just generally about the concessions. So I think, a Greek salad was going to be £9. Yeah. They were saying that it was a terrible-looking salad. So they were just going through all of the provisions. And I couldn't help thinking, with everything that's going on in the world, people dying in order to build these stadia, and what we've got here is a TripAdvisor sort of preview of the terrible provisions in the
You could argue if since we've been through so much to get the World Cup, they could at least do it right. That would be the flip side of that argument. Yeah. But yes, I'm also very much against the stadium deaths.
I thought the nachos were valued at £4.60 though. I mean, can't really complain. Yeah.
After a couple of Bud Zeros, that really hits the spot. Let's have a look now at the Eyes front page, Anthony. What are they leading with? OK, so this is leading with something which I think everybody would have known about, really, if they'd had an interest in the news and had maybe considered the facts. But the Treasury is now saying that if the government sticks by its plan to cut immigration to the country, that will necessitate a rise in taxation and a loss of, public service amenity resulting from that. And it's kind of, we're returning to an old argument that we had a long time ago. It's like people pay taxes, young people pay more taxes than old people. We're an ageing country. We need young people in this country to work and pay tax in order to maintain triple locks and all that sort of thing. So essentially what you're looking at is, at some point, there's going to be some kind of civil war / reckoning, I think,
within the Conservative Party where you're going to have one group of people going, look, to make this work, we're going to need to have people come in, and another group will go, no, we can't have brown people coming in.
Well, the issue is, and I think it's a worthy debate to have, and as you said, a national conversation we've had in the past. You are right, there's a direct correlation between economic growth and rates of migration. And of course, it's quite self-correcting, because if an economy is in decline...
People leave.
The economic migrants, fewer come and more leave, which could happen in the next couple of years if we're to believe projections about the economy. But I take your point about the economic growth and paying pensions and the young population. There is a flip side, which is that more numbers impacts school places, the NHS, housing.
Well, no, it's
infrastructure.
We're talking about people that are working in the NHS. So the problem that we've got with nurse retention at the moment, we've lost a lot of people. We had Brexit, lots of people have left, and we didn't replace those people. We are short of people to actually do those jobs. So it's not really an either-or. We're talking about people that are part of the public service that we're trying to build. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair point, and this is a dilemma for the government, isn't it, Nick?
Well, the thing is, Anthony talks about pressure on services, but you could just as easily argue that excess immigration has caused pressure on services. As you said, housing is another big example. Lots of people would argue that. They'll say this is a supply and demand crisis in housing. Well, we've got too many people who've come in too quickly, and hence
6 million people in 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's like 1 million visas granted in 2021.
Can I come back at you about the housing problem? It's not really a supply and demand issue. It's about how much money costs. When central banks all over the world are going, look here, governments can borrow money for 0.1%. What happens is you get all sorts of people going out and they're going, hey, I'll buy 10 houses. So it's the rapid expansion in house price growth is because money was made freely available, not really so much to do with the shortage of housing. And these are policy decisions. If we want more houses, we build them.
But we never do build them. Everyone talks about building them, and it never happens. We never build anywhere near enough.
Well, OK.
So too many people compared to the number of houses.
Well, we used to. So if you take the post-war period, we built a huge number of houses. The issue was that housing used to be built by the government. The government, local authorities used to be the largest house builder in the country, building like 1 in 2 houses. But then what happened? Sorry, this is more like history than the news.
This is brilliant.
It's more like history.
But we've never had facts before on headlines. I'm really enjoying it.
We like empty rhetoric.
But what happened was obviously, late 80s when they sold off the council housing, that was never replaced. And
it
used to be.
Pardon? It was all Thatcher's fault.
Well, she began that process, and the reason why she did it was because she didn't like having working class people in places like Westminster, voting. So that's
not the reason. She came from a pretty lower middle class background herself. She was a grocer's daughter. She didn't have some vendetta against working class people.
No, it wasn't a vendetta against working class people. It was because working class people in social housing voted Labour. And actually, there was a massive court case. Dame Shirley Porter left the country and was...
So she wanted people to the chance to own their own. She wanted people to have the chance to own their own house as an aspirational thing.
Yeah, but and aside, the secondary consequence of it was that she was actually... It was kind of gerrymandering. It went to court. There was a massive surge.
Because people in social housing would buy their property, sell it, move somewhere else, and then middle-class people would come in.
Well, basically, by breaking up that social housing thing, she felt that she was breaking up Labour heartlands, essentially. And, I can't think of think of any other reason why she would have said, hey, guys, why don't we replace this social housing with other housing?
The replacing is a really good point, but just going back to her motivation, I mean, I take on board what you said, many will agree, but then didn't she liberate the working class in this country, and didn't the middle class just massively expand as a result? Yeah, look, I don't want to put everything on Margaret Thatcher. It was not, what happened from the 80s to the modern day was a trend, in...
She certainly achieved economic growth, if that's what you want. We're talking about economic growth here. She certainly achieved that.
What? Yeah, but we had North Sea oil. What are you on about?
Well, we're talking about economic growth.
Fair point. I mean, that was a bit of a gold rush,
that's where the money came from.
And I think you raise a really good point that with the income from social housing stock and North Sea oil, not much was invested. I mean, the Norwegians have got their Oljefond, haven't they, which is this oil fund, a massive pension for the country from oil profits. We didn't do that, and we didn't invest the income from selling council flats.
And importantly as well, local authorities were funded by the properties that they built. So they built a house, people lived in it, that was their income, that's where their money came from. When they're forced to sell that, you know, they don't have that income. And, you know, that's why we've, you know, it's not the only reason.
Overall, it was good, though, wasn't it, for working class people to be able to buy their own home? I don't have a problem with that. It was very much about lifting. Was it about lifting people up?
No, the issue was each time you sell one, build a new one.
No, bingo. And I think you're so right, and I think that's it. Well, a fascinating debate. Let's move on now to Saturday's Telegraph. Nick, what have you got for us? Try and make it that good, by the way, can you?
Well, it won't be that long, but they've gone with Sunak, my fears for safety of women. And, of course, this follows the horrible murder of Zara Alina, this horrific murder. She was 35, murdered by this guy, Jordan McSweeney. Horrific story. So, of course, Sunak's talking about being tough on crime. So, I mean, and he has this quite strange, well, to me, quite strange phrase. He says, my emotional motivation is his wife and daughters. I don't really know if you need a motivation to be tough on crime, but, you know, most people could just walk down the street in London. But I suppose if you're Sunak and you're always going around in tinted cars and stuff, you might not see crime. But yeah, that's fair enough. He always talks about his family. I understand why he does that. That's perfectly fine. And it is unsafe. So hopefully he will be tough on crime and he'll actually do something about it. I'm not sure what will actually be done, but I look forward to it. I think
one of the key issues on this was that this guy was, you know, suffering from a mental health condition. And there's a difference between sort of crime where somebody goes, hey, this is the way that I'm going to live, I'm going to go and do this, and somebody that has a mental health condition.
Having an episode.
Yeah, I mean, it's just much more difficult to predict and to contain.
The shocking part about it, though, was that he was free on licence from a sentence for criminal damage, racially aggravated harassment and unauthorised possession of a knife in prison. So he was already... This is one of these situations where you know they're a criminal, but then they just somehow are out and they re-offend, in this case, with murder.
Yeah, I mean... you know, what can you say? It's awful for, you know, for anyone involved or, you know, that you know, knew this woman. It's one of those things where, you know, at the end of the day, with the offending that he had on his record, you know, could anybody predict that this guy would go out and actually murder somebody? You know, criminal... It's one of those things that's...
Staying on crime, only a couple of seconds to this before the break, but Anthony, the Times, I think it's the Met Chief Police wants to make it easier to sack ineffective police officers. Is this a good move?
Yeah, do you know what? I knew nothing about this until I read up on it a while ago. And essentially, so if you take the Metropolitan Police Force, for example, there's 3,000 Metropolitan Police officers who are unable to go on shifts and do their jobs. You know, we're talking about sort of between 10 and 20% of the available workforce. For reasons of ill health or just simple non-performance. So we're not talking about people who are suspended or, you know, for other kinds of reasons. And it's a tricky one, really, because in every other area of employment, we kind of say, well, you know, we should look after people. We should make sure that you know that their employment rights, there's duty of care and their employment rights are respected, but. I don't know, it feels like in such a large organisation that it's really easy for this to be exploited, and I think he's probably right. I do question how so many people could be out of action, and if you're in the police, it's, you're expected to be match fit.
I think you're right, Anthony, and it also begs the question, would that happen in the private sector? A very interesting conversation, which I've got no doubt will continue. That's it for our analysis of Saturday's headlines. Many more stories coming up after the break. We'll be delving behind the front pages, getting our teeth into, among other things, Ronaldo. See you shortly.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
I'm Mark Dolan. This is Headliners, your first look at tomorrow's papers. Tonight, in the company of the brilliantly talented Anthony Ayton, who's joined us tonight for the first time, and, of course, Headliners legend, Headliners icon, the one and only Nick Dixon, a man whose reputation precedes him, as does his hair. Saturday's Mirror now, and Manchester United's glory days are gone, and now its star player could be too. Nick.
Yep, Cristiano Ronaldo has done a bombshell interview on an inferior channel that we usually beat, but this is done very well, and it was a fascinating interview. Basically, he came across to me pretty well as a lifelong United fan. Some of the fans will not have liked it, but I thought he came across well. But he said some things that you're never going to keep your job when you say. He said he has no respect for the manager, Erik ten Hag. He said, if he doesn't respect me, I don't respect him. And this was all to do with this thing of, well, not all to do with, but a large part of it was ten Hag said, yeah, I won't bring you on with 3 minutes left in the game versus Man City because it's disrespectful. Then he asked him to come on with 3 minutes left in the game versus Tottenham. So Ronaldo's like, well, what are you on about? So he walked off. He also said that the facilities hadn't been upgraded since his time there under Alex Ferguson, which is true. He also said the owners, the Glazers don't care about football, they only care about marketing. And he said some quite moving stuff about his family. It was a good interview. The cynical part of it is he was doing it because the World Cup's coming up. He wants to shine in the World Cup and get a transfer. And obviously, after you said you don't respect the manager, you can't possibly go back. So that's what's going to happen. United are now going to terminate his contract, and there's going to be a legal battle for who pays what money, basically, because there might be 16 million that he might lose.
Yeah, I mean, are you in Team United or Team Ronaldo, Anthony?
I'd say I'm in Team United. I think for any normal, balanced person, they could find a way to end that relationship and sort of leave with their, their legacy intact. And he failed to do that. And I think I watched the interview today, and there were points in the interview where he spoke about himself in the third person. I couldn't help but see the single crucifix dangling from his right ear, and the whole tone of the interview is obsequious. And I think he's got so used to living within that bubble of, I am the greatest, I will be the greatest. And, he's a fantastic player even now, but he's not the greatest. And the reason why he's on the bench is for footballing reasons. I'm a Liverpool supporter, but I can see what Ten Hag is doing, and I think he's got every right to bench him. And, I just think he's dealt with it badly.
He doesn't fit into Ten Hag's plans, but to give the other side, Roy Keane was dealt with very badly when he left, as was Rio Ferdinand. There does seem to be a problem with, you have these legend players, of course they have high status and big egos, but they've also given a lot to the club. Why can't the club communicate with them better and end on better terms? It doesn't seem that hard.
Can I ask you as a fan then? I watched a couple of United games, and what I hated seeing from both him and Fernandes was, there'd be a passage of play, and then he'd throw his arms up in disgust. And I felt that he made the other players around him smaller, and he made them less confident with his constant
that's annoying.
I didn't like
That's definitely annoying, and he's even said he regretted leaving the pitch versus Tottenham. But
he did
the flip side of it is that the younger players haven't listened to Ronaldo, and they're not listening to him, and they sort of don't like him. It's like, surely you've got the best player, arguably, of all time. You want to copy what he's doing and listen to everything he has to say. And some players have, like Dalot, who he singled out as one of the great professional players. Surely you want to listen to Ronaldo if he's in your club and watch him and copy him.
Yeah, but then I bet if you spoke to Ten Hag or you spoke to the coaching staff, they might say, no, you know, Sancho's been a fantastic professional. You know, I mean, he had a difficult transition coming over to United, but at Dortmund he was incredible. You know, I can't believe that he's sitting there eating massive wads of chocolate cake. It doesn't really sound or ring true to me.
I just realised we've alienated the general viewer who's not a football fan. That was just all noise to them.
I quite liked it. It was like a football podcast. Where's Alan Brazil? On to Saturday's Daily Star, and let's talk about leg waxing, Anthony.
Did you ask me this just because I'm bald and you just kind of assumed
I don't think you're bald. I think you have volunteered to have, like, a smooth pate.
That's right. I've donated my hair.
You're lucky because you cut all your hair off and it suits you. The issue for some men is you don't know the shape of your head, what it's going to look like.
Until after you've done the...
You've got a good shape.
Oh, thank you.
You're more Bruce Willis than William Hay.
I think we should stick to that and to forget this Star headline. I mean, it's actually... I mean, it's hilarious. I look at it and it's here we go, here we go, here we go. And essentially they're saying that the England World Cup stars will be waxing their legs during this World Cup in order to cope with the heat. I'm not sure it makes that much difference.
They're looking for that edge, that 1%.
Yeah. But don't
marginal gains.
Don't the hairs cool you down or something?
But most of them have got shaved legs anyway. You know, when you see them, they take their tops off, they shave their bodies.
I know. As a northern man, I'm completely against it. Then again, on the flip side to that, Paul Scholes used to get so hot he couldn't play. So maybe this is what we need to do to survive in Qatar. I don't know.
Yeah, that's it. Well, let's stay on that theme because in Saturday's Daily Star, if you like putting balls in certain goals, there's more bad news at the World Cup, Nick.
Yeah, England fans face 7 years in prison if they defy World Cup bonking ban in Qatar. This is the Daily Star, inevitably, from that language. But yes, they're saying that if you're in a husband and wife team, it's perfectly allowed, but not if it's sex outside of marriage. And, you know, this is the part I respect. Like I said, I don't approve of the way it's been done, the stadium, the people building the stadiums, their deaths are obviously horrific. But when it comes to... This would actually... I mean, imagine if we did this, but our society would be better, wouldn't it, Mark? I mean, look, this is me propagandising for my Christian theocracy. But there's something to be said for the morality of... I mean, I quite like this aspect of it. I'm not saying I'm going to move to Qatar necessarily, but I'm saying, you know, this is what... I don't mind this.
Well, Anthony, who are we to go to another country and dictate to them about the rules of that land?
We're England. We've been doing it for centuries.
Good point.
No.
When the waiter doesn't understand what we're saying, we just say it louder.
Yeah, that seems to be the way, sadly. I think with this... I mean, who's enforcing it at the end of the day? How is this actually being enforced? Are people just looking at bits of the statute book and saying, if this is known that you're doing this, that, you know, then we're going to do something about it? Because presumably there's only 2 witnesses to the event, unless, you know, it's happening in public. And both sides would be equally guilty and just as much...
They have people in the hotel rooms checking. They stand there and they watch.
In the hotel rooms?
Yeah, that's their job. 24 hours a day, they just... And the one guy does a night shift and they're just on a kind of...
But they presume they can't be in your hotel room.
Basil Fawlty.
Yeah, they're in there 24...
Basil Fawlty in that episode of 40 Towers when he's convinced that a couple are shagging. And at one point he goes up the ladder on the outside of the room.
It's like that.
Perhaps on the window. Perhaps, but you're not even joking. There are people that will be monitoring the behaviour of guests,
I was joking, but I've got no idea. I just said it. But I like the idea of a guy just monitoring 24/7, another guy doing the night shift. Would you think it's beyond the realm of possibility?
I just don't. You know, I think it's one of those things that, you know, when they don't like somebody and they're looking for a reason to arrest somebody as being a troublemaker, you know, there's a whole bunch of rules that they can pull out. But as with most places, I think that. I don't believe that in Qatar nobody's having sex outside of marriage.
And on that bombshell, let's do 2 in 2 if we can. Saturday's Telegraph, with a story on how to commit crimes and get away with them. The trick is to be the leader of an oil-rich Middle Eastern nation. Anthony.
So this is the story of Joe Biden having... apparently granted immunity from prosecution to Mohammed bin Salman for the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. The way this story has been presented doesn't really fit with my understanding of how international law and diplomatic relations occur. So, bin Salman was the head of state at the time. A murder took place, and what people are saying was that because he was the head of state, he should be fixed with, liability for he should be found guilty of this murder. But, the way international relations work, if Putin was to fly abroad to meet with other international, nobody's going to try and arrest him. Nobody's going to try and arrest Barack Obama for various drone attacks that have killed people in other countries, violating their laws in ways which would be considered murder. There's a kind of an understanding that if people go around arresting head of states, then you as a head of state are liable to be arrested. And there's also this general understanding of sovereign immunity. So, while you're acting as a head of state, you're not going to be found guilty of crimes. So I'm suspicious about the way the story's been presented. I don't think it's something that Joe Biden's done. It's the Justice Department in America making a legal finding.
Interesting analysis. Last but not least for this part, Saturday's Times and the youth in France have gone too laissez-faire. It's now laissez-faire, isn't it, Nick?
Well, yeah, Mike, you asked me to do this story quickly, but it's a think piece about French ennui, so I'll try and do it quickly. But yes, it's basically that there's an epidemic of idleness in France. Many English people would say there already was, but even more so, and they're sort of saying it's almost a kind of Camus-esque, Michel Houellebecq-esque kind of ennui, as I've said. They're saying that young people are not bothering doing anything. They'd rather be at home. They'd rather be on the sofa than working. And they cite the things like the terror attacks and the yellow vest protests because it's come from a socialist think tank, which is probably why they're against the yellow vest. But it's a kind of, who knows what it is? Netflix culture, low testosterone, problems buying a house. There could be any number of reasons.
Oh, and the small matter of shutting young people indoors for 2.5 years.
That didn't help, and that is mentioned as well. So, yeah, yes, basically French people have given up, young people especially.
The pandemic has normalised doing nothing, hasn't it?
Yeah.
In fact, not just that.
It's rewarded it.
Legitimised it.
Yeah.
You're a good person if you stay home and do nothing. Yeah. It's not great messaging, is it?
No.
No, but it also lowered our boredom thresholds. I think probably most Fridays prior to the pandemic, I was looking for something to do. I needed a plan. And then slowly it was like that plan only had to be a box set, a viable box set that could get me through the weekend. So.
Yeah, even the great Woody Allen, of whom I think you're quite a fan, Nick.
Well, yeah. Previously, not the recent Woody Allen, but
some of the recent oeuvre. But he's one of the, love him or hate him, one of the most prolific filmmakers of all time. Pretty much a movie a year, and in the pandemic he was stopped from making films. He said, I quite like just staying at home doing nothing, actually. So even like really, really prolific people have got the kind of lockdown bug, and it seems to have reached France.
I know, once you allow people that, they realise they like it, but it's actually, we all like it, we all dread doing things, but when you do them, or maybe I'm speaking for myself, but when you actually do them, it's better for you, ultimately.
Yeah, too right. Well, look, that's it for part 2. Coming up after the break, pantomime dames causing drama, drama in the NHS, and drama at Twitter HQ. See you shortly.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky. That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg. And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is Headliners, your first look at tomorrow's papers. Tonight, in the company of the excellent comedians Anthony Ayton and Nick Dixon. Saturday's Guardian now, with the US giving its best effort to convince us what comes out of its labs are now safe. Good luck with that, Anthony.
Thank you very much.
Nothing to see here?
No, not at all. So this story is centred around a US declaration that lab-grown meat is safe to eat.
Yay.
It's called cultivated meat. And there's a company called Upside Foods who've done a chicken sandwich.
Yeah.
And you know, all of the meat is grown from cells that have been taken from chicken, but obviously they're not part of an animal. So just thinking about the environmental impact, there's obviously, you don't have all of the land usage and the water usage and, you know, the CO2 aspect of it. And it raises an interesting question for me, because I kind of think, well, if it's been grown from cells and no animals suffered and environmental impact, can you eat that chicken and still call yourself a vegan?
Potentially.
And that's what I'm thinking, yeah. If it's not lived, it's not died.
Well, yeah, I think, you know, vegans are known for their laissez-faire attitude, so I think they'll be fine with it. That's one of my deadpan jokes. My concern, Mark, is that we'll all be forced to swallow Bill Gates' synthetic meat. This is where this is going. Gates wants to make meat synthetic. The average person's going to be banned from eating meat. As we know, there'll be meat taxes. They want us to eat the bugs and be happy. And then it'll be not even bugs, but it'll be synthetic meat. And that's where this is all going. We don't even know if it's safe. What happens to the farmers? I've got so many questions, but I won't eat it unless... But will we even know if we're eating it? Will it be like horse meat? Will we be eating it by accident?
Yeah, but meat's already synthetic. I mean, you remember the scandal a few years ago about the meatballs, and when they did DNA analysis on it, they found that there was parts of this meatball that had been all over Europe. This is when we still had free movement of goods, so you could get a bit of spleen from over here and a bit of it ear from over there and make it all into a delicious confection. But you've got
welcome Bill Gates' synthetic meat.
What's this got to do with Bill Gates?
Well, he's proposed this. He's one of the biggest people.
This is a global scientific movement. It's not Bill Gates.
He's become well known for promoting this new synthetic meat.
I know, but I'm sorry, I can't accept the Bill Gates as the boogeyman thing.
But he is moving towards synthetic meat.
He's an investor in alternative meats, fake meats.
Yeah, but there's...
I didn't say it was the boogeyman. I said he's going to do synthetic meat.
It's a multi-billion...
He's a boogeyman.
It's a multi-billion-pound industry that is being kind of invested in all over the globe by lots of different companies. That's like saying there's only one company that's involved in mobile phone technology. Bill Gates is, sure, he's a player and he's got a lot of money, but there's lots of companies that are doing this kind of stuff. So,
I mean, would you eat a lab-grown steak, Anthony?
Do you know what? I mean, the reality is if I was given meat that was not grown organically, but
grass-fed,
or grass-fed, or if I was shown a video of how the chicken had lived before being given a chicken sandwich, I might view that differently. So, side by side, lab-grown, or a chicken that's lived in a darkened box, with the clawed foot of its cousin on its head because there's no room to move. There's not much in it.
That's a really, really interesting and fair point. Saturday's Mirror now, and drama at Twitter HQ continues. What's happened this time, Nick?
Well, Twitter bars staff from offices and suspends all entry passes amid sabotage fears. And what this is we've seen these activists at Twitter. Musk has come in, he's shaken up the company, he's got rid of a lot of the rubbish people.
Half of them have gone and no one's noticed.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, he even said you're going to have to work longer hours, and immediately lots of people quit, which is a great self-selecting way of the laziest people getting rid of themselves just on the threat of doing longer hours. But because half of them are activists, they're now having to actually shut down. You can say in a minute, you don't have to like roll your eyes through your mind, but in a minute, they're now all having to. They're worried that they're going to sabotage the actual company, because if you've got a load of activist staff that hate they've been posting things on Twitter that are actively against the boss publicly. So imagine what they'll do in private. So they've become so concerned they actually now can't let them back in. Although there was a funny thing where apparently Musk had to recontact someone to say, can you actually let us in, because we don't know how to get in. So yeah.
Yeah, what do you think about this, Anthony?
I've not heard so much nonsense before. Musk basically overpaid for Twitter. Twitter's losing £1 billion a year. It's £3 million a day. That is the last purchase in tech where anybody's going to pay stupid money. And when you look across the whole tech industry, you're seeing Deliveroo pulling out of Australia. They weren't pulling out of any countries, a few weeks ago. The change in the cost of money has brought about a change in how all of these companies are going to operate. So actually, you're not wrong to the extent that a lot of tech companies are going to be sacking people left, right and centre, because half of them are losing money. Twitter's never made a penny.
Including Facebook, who have seen big layoffs as well.
Yeah, Google have done it. That's going to be par for the course. The thing that is interesting, though, the problem that he's going to have is that he's caught between two stools. So Twitter makes its money by, these big advertisers. But at the same time, those advertisers want to feel that they're putting their money into something that is seen to be decent and not, a hate-mongering kind of...
Because free speech is hate-mongering now.
Well, no, it's not...
The problem is pressure groups that are campaigning for companies to leave Twitter...
Can I come back to that point?
Well, yeah, go for it.
OK. So when you have a situation like, say, take Brexit, for example, when we had and this is on both sides, I think for somebody to send a tweet threatening to rape a politician is hate-mongering. I think it's actually more than that. I think it's terrorism.
I think Musk would agree with that.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I'm saying. If you don't have any protections, that's what Twitter becomes.
But he's been clear that he does. He just wants free speech with the extremes and the actual incitement cut off. So incitement's already covered in the First Amendment anyway. Well, he will stick with that.
Yeah, but how's he going to do that when he sacked half the people that actually make that occur?
Well, he's doing a shake-up at the start. I think that's separate from the issue of censorship and free speech.
But this would be like, an example would be restoring the account of the journalist Alex Berenson, who was permanently suspended by Twitter simply for publishing official government data about COVID vaccines.
Yeah, or you could reinstate...
He took Twitter to court and had to be reinstated. Thanks.
He won, yeah.
Musk wants people like that to be able to stay on the platform without having to go to court to stay there.
Or reinstate the former president of the United States. You've got Putin on there. You've got all kinds of people, despotic leaders, but you can't have Trump. It's completely absurd.
Well, I think specifically it's not, because actually they had, Do you
think Trump should be banned from Twitter? Do you think Trump should be banned from Twitter?
I think the ban that he undertook was absolutely correct, because he used it to incite violence.
Trump used it's just so absurd.
So do you not accept? Do you not accept that a bunch of people went with guns and actually tried?
You've got actual. Despotic leaders.
Let Anthony finish.
No, he's just going to talk about Jan 6. It's so obvious what he's going to say.
OK, or more recently, they went round to Nancy Pelosi's house with a hammer.
And that was Trump's fault for being on Twitter.
No,
come on.
That's
not a serious argument.
That's what he foments.
That's just laughable and ridiculous.
So it didn't happen then? It did happen.
You hang yourself with that argument because it's so absurd.
Well, no, the only hanging was the people going up with the mock things trying to hang Mike
You can have all kinds of terrorists and all kinds of despotic leaders, but Trump can't be on there because you don't like his politics.
No, it's not that I don't like his politics. I don't really go on Twitter. It's not my thing. My point is that they have a set of rules. They've got to try as best they can. He had God knows how many warnings.
Well, the people behind that are luckily now sacked, so he may be able to come back on. But I did actually read the entire transcript, so I'm not just talking nonsense. I read the entire transcript of the first meeting between Elon Musk and his staff. It's actually very exciting. He's trying to do new things with it. He wants it to be a payment platform. He wants to bring YouTube people on to monetize videos and so on. So he has a lot of very interesting...
It's going to just go broke. I mean, it's
well, if it fails, it'll go broke. But he did very well with Tesla. He's done well with his other companies. So if anyone can do it, I think Musk can, but let's see.
An interesting debate. Look, Headliners is a broad church of opinion, as we've just demonstrated. Great debate. More of that, please, gents. Saturday's Telegraph now, and a food so posh it makes you sound like a member of the aristocracy has been banned in royal residences. Anthony.
Okay, well, I mean, you pretty much nailed the story there. I don't know whether I should repeat what you just said, but I could do it in a different voice. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Okay. Well, no. All I'm going to say is, obviously they've banned foie gras. Yeah. And for some people, for your beef Wellington enthusiast who wants to do it absolutely correctly, that's going to be problematic because you are supposed to have a layer of foie gras. With the ham and then the pastry. I mean, it's when you know how foie gras is made, it's one of those things that you think, oh God, that's awful. And it just, I don't know. For me, it's almost like it becomes one of those things where it's just one of many awful things in the world. At the end of the day, yes, you can get rid of it, but does that mean he's still going to go fox hunting?
And how well treated are pigs in farms? And you mentioned the chickens earlier. Briefly, do you know exactly? I won't eat foie gras. I'm not.
How
is foie gras made then?
Well, basically, what they do is they force feed geese. I'm not going to do the hand. I'm not going to do the gesture of how it works.
I'm told Nick is willing to do that. So, yeah. Nick's going to act it out actually now.
It's about force-feeding ducks with a funnel.
Until their liver splits.
I did read
But they massage the neck as well.
Yeah. I read a very long article about why it can actually be ethical, but I can't remember what the conclusion was because it was so long. But yeah, I mean, I suppose the king can do what he wants with Buckingham Palace, but you do worry that Charles is going to get involved in various sort of, I don't want to say woke, whatever you call them, minor causes like this, when he could be like kinging and doing important king stuff.
I mean, my view would be that it does sound like an awful practice, and since I found out that's how it was made, I mean, I've never really
cut down on it.
Yeah, but the guy, he's massively, he ran or was obviously heavily involved in the Duchy estate. Farming and animal husbandry is a big thing of his, so why wouldn't he have an interest in this?
Why wouldn't he indeed? No, that's right, and he's on the right side of the organic argument, isn't he? He's been talking about that for many years now. They laugh, but now they take him seriously. Saturday's Metro, and I don't know what level we're supposed to be operating on, but men dressing as women is apparently transphobic. Nick, I need some help with this.
Yeah, this is a GMB guest claims pantomime dames could be transphobic and should be cancelled. This is Gifty Enright, not Grifty, surprisingly. But this is... she made an interesting claim. She said, I'm all for tradition, but the danger with tradition is if it's not updated and modernised. I mean, that's kind of the point of tradition, is it's not really. I mean, that's like those people that say, oh, I'm in favour of free speech, but... and then a huge list of why they're absolutely not. So it's just... it was quite... and then she went on to say the thing about it's potentially transphobic to be a pantomime dame, obviously absurd. It's the kind of low-level stuff that you kind of trap us into talking about, and then everyone will say, oh, GB News just talks about woke stuff all the time. It's the kind of low-level, depressing dirge of wokeness, and it's just obviously it's not that important, but it's just vaguely annoying and stupid.
And it also demonstrates that the sort of woke culture has no truck with fun, which is what panto is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the crime of panto. It's jolly.
The crime of panto is that it's rubbish. I mean, what kind of idiot child sits there going, look behind, and is hugely entertained by that? I think
gets me every time.
Does it really? No. I mean, it's a strange one because the reason, is anybody really interested in this story? I mean, I don't think that there's that many people that feel offended by pantomime dames. And from what you're saying is you don't feel like this is a story that you would want to talk about. You feel trapped into talking about the story, is the exact phrase you used. So really what we're talking about is some people making a big deal out of something which is only really relevant to a tiny minority of people.
Yeah, but it's still annoying that she said it, but so then you sort of end up having to address it. But
you don't have to address it.
Well, it's my job.
Yeah, I know it's your job. You're not trapped into it. You can't complain about it. You choose to be here.
Well, listen, what we're going to do is bully Nick Dixon into discussing a lot more stories he doesn't like straight after the break. Yes, we've got lots in part 4, including bad behaviour from Banksy, sneering Salt Bay, and victory for the gamers. See you shortly.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland, Wales,
And Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio.
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at tomorrow's papers. Tonight in the company of the brilliant comedians Anthony Ayton and Nick Dixon. Saturday's Times, and this one is about niche subcultures, something, Nick, that I guess you're quite keen on.
How dare you? Yeah, this is about hours playing video games. It's harmless fun for most teens. It's claiming in this article. Although one problem with video games, I was listening to a feminist thinker called Andrew Tate, and he made a good point. He said that you get nothing from video games. The only problem with video games, you invest all that time, and of course it's fun and interesting, but what do you actually get out of it in the real world if you're not a Twitch streamer making money off it? You sort of build up your avatar in the fake world versus, you know, what you get behind in the real world. I thought it was an interesting point. But this is about how it's not necessarily going to cause mental health problems to spend a lot of time playing video games. But the only problem with this study is it was self-reporting. So kids who were spending loads of time playing video games, yeah, I'm fine, mate.
But teenagers would never lie, would they? Especially to a grown-up.
Well, and they might have a different definition of mental health problems, but they're saying in a small percentage of cases, it does seem to indicate there is some link, but it's more that those people are perhaps sort of self-medicating with games and they would have had mental health problems anyway, and it's claiming that the rest don't. Though I would say, I don't know, everything in moderation, whatever.
But presumably they're all self-reporting, even if you are not playing a video game and you're saying, well, this is the state of my mental health. So, so it kind of controls out the...
Yeah, it makes the whole thing pointless.
well, it doesn't really, because what you're doing is you're assuming that there's just as many people that would lie who don't play video games as people that lie.
I'm not saying they lie. I'm just saying it's their own self-assessment. So, you know, if you say, do you have mental health problems, and they go, no, I suppose arguably
so if you ask that of everybody, and then you were trying to make an assessment of whether people that have plants in their living room, you know, then you're gonna, you know, if people in one group lie just as much as people in another group, then it's going to get rid of that problem. But the thing that I thought was interesting about it, I've never liked video games. I don't play them. To me, they're a waste of time. But what I've noticed, having gone to university with people that do, is that a lot of the people that end up being really, really good at software and who end up going, you know, the people that when they've got a problem, they will boringly go round and round in a circle until they have solved it, do play video games. And it's part of the language that makes these people digital natives and more able to
and it's quite social because, I mean, my 17-year-old son is online with his mates when he's gaming. Plus, some of these games are complex, problem-solving. So I guess it's not all bad. It's always worth looking at things in 360. Chaps, back to my little catchphrase 2 in 2 before we go. And Saturday's Telegraph, Anthony, can you guess what Banksy has been up to this week?
Yeah, so this story is in relation to Banksy putting out a tweet urging shoplifters to go and steal clothes from a company called Guess. And it was all part of a copyright row. They brought out a range of clothing which had featured some of his artwork, and they put some of his artwork in the window.
Yeah, I think I've got a picture here. There it is. And of course, Banksy, famous for those secretive paintings that are done on buildings in the dead of night.
And I mean, I don't know the legal ins and outs of it. I mean, I read elsewhere that the company had lost a case to Gucci where there'd been a copyright infringement, and in other circumstances, Banksy had lost. But I mean, just generally, I think if you produce a bit of art, it ought to belong to you, and people should respect that.
It sounds a bit cheeky to me, don't you think, Nick?
Yeah.
Well, the part I don't like is the kind of bourgeois bohemianism of it, of Banksy saying, "Oh, go and steal," and yet, you know, he won't get in trouble if those people get arrested, and he's not part of the shop. So I don't like the idea of him saying just go out and shoplift, because it's kind of weird. And also I don't like his art lately, because it's sort of gone into sort of cringe, low-level satire of the level of sort of led by donkeys kind of vibe. But on the flip side, I do hate the idea of people stealing your art. He's right about that. Why should they just use his art without consulting him? That is mad. People do it with music. They do it with art. They take the whatever out of artists all the time, thinking you can just use their stuff. So I am against that.
But he should sue them rather than encourage them to break the law.
Yeah, but then he might lose his anonymity. You know, so, you know, the guy's an activist.
He's got cover.
He's there to raise attention. That's what he's done.
And last but not least, the Daily Star, and no surprise, England fans are passionate about football, so much so they'll miss their mother-in-law's funeral. Nick?
Oh, yeah, this is almost half of England and Wales fans would skip work for World Cup and miss funeral. Nearly 50% said they'd risk their employment and the respect of their family and friends. I mean, that's funny. I mean, if it's Italia 90, I get it. It was a magical tournament, those kind of tournaments. Would I do it for the Qatar World Cup? I feel I probably wouldn't, though I sort of get it, because in 2006 I remember being stuck at work in my retail job when it was England versus Portugal, and I also remember in the Euros recently being forced to listen to Simon Evans do a speech rather than watch the football on telly, which was a huge problem. So I sort of sympathise. I do sympathise, but maybe if we're in the final, you know, I'm not sure about the group stages.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think, you know, there's some World Cups where, you know, England are performing well and there's an excitement about every game, and there's others that are dead. And if it's great, I'm not sure I'd miss a funeral, but I'd miss work.
It would be a bit much. What people do, don't they, Anthony, is that they rush off to the pub and they say, normally to their other half, who's female, sorry, love, I've got to go to the football, it's a big game. And it'll be like Finland versus, you know, New Zealand. It's like, is that really a crunch match? And the bottom line is most of the World Cup is an excuse to go to the pub and just have a few beers with your mates, isn't it?
But some of it can be. Remember 1994? England weren't even in it, and yet it was one of the best World Cups ever.
Yeah, it's true. It's a really good point, because we could enjoy it and not have all that stress.
Yeah.
Boys, thank you for a brilliant show. Plenty of lols and lots of debates as well. Please come back and see us soon. Of course, we are 7 nights a week here on Headliners. We're back tomorrow at 11 and Sunday as well. And don't forget, I'm back for Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In from 8 o'clock tomorrow and the People's Hour. See you then.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel. Magnificent.
That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's Friday night, and for one night only, this is Barrage at Live, World Cup special, live from Wembley. Please welcome your host, Nigel Barrage.
Good evening, everybody. It's a World Cup special live from Wembley, the home of football. Where else? We'll be asking the question, is football coming home? We hope that it is. But also, sport and politics, you can never divide the two. Great range of guests. All of that coming up in a couple of minutes after the news with Alice Porter.
Good evening. It's 7 o'clock. I'm Alice Porter in the GB newsroom. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has accused the government of locking the country into an economic doom loop. The comments follow the Chancellor's autumn statement yesterday. Meanwhile, the Institute for Fiscal Studies is warning the fall in living standards will be the largest since records began. Jeremy Hunt has defended his plans as the right thing to do. But Sir Keir says the fiscal measures will hurt the most vulnerable.
The government yesterday, having done huge damage to the economy, has gone after working people again with stealth taxes and council tax increases and done nothing about non-dom status, the super rich who are not paying their taxes in this country. And they've got no plan for growth, so they're locking us in a doom loop. We would have put a plan for growth on the table that actually runs towards the challenges of tomorrow.
A sexual predator has admitted to the murder of law graduate Zara Alina, who was brutally kicked and stamped on, then left for dead. Jordan McSweeney also admitted to sexually assaulting Zara Alina as she walked home from a night out in East London last summer. The 35-year-old from Dagenham was found by passers-by with severe head injuries. She later died in hospital. McSweeney had only recently been released from prison and had targeted more than one woman before. Detective Chief Inspector Dave Wellams says the Met Police are committed to tackling violence against women.
Jordan McSweeney has pleaded guilty today to the most serious offences. He is clearly a very dangerous individual, and his guilty plea today means that he is certain to serve a considerable period of time behind bars.
A coroner has ruled that police errors contributed to the deaths of a mother and daughter who were killed by the daughter's estranged husband. An inquest heard how in 2018, Raneem Ouda repeatedly called the police after Janbiz Taran attacked her at a restaurant in Solihull. He followed her and her mother home, but officers failed to reach them in time before they were murdered. The family said Ms. Uden had previously contacted police about her abusive relationship, but little action was taken. West Midlands Police has apologised to the family. Civil servants in the Home Office, Border Force, Department for Transport and DEFRA are to take industrial action in a dispute over pay. The PCS union has been calling for a 10% pay rise for its members, but this was rejected by the government. It's planning 1 month of what it calls sustained industrial action from mid-December, which will affect ports, borders and other areas of transport. The Royal Air Force says it's found unacceptable behaviour in the Red Arrows after allegations of sexual assault, bullying and misogyny. The force said the investigation had found no criminal activity, but disciplinary action had been taken, including dismissals. It's thought more than 40 members of staff gave evidence to the inquiry. The team has since received training in unacceptable behaviour. TV, online and DAB plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Faraj.
Good evening, everybody. I'm live from Wembley, the home of football, because we're 48 hours away from the Qatar World Cup kicking off. Expect amazing. That's the slogan that's being put out by the Qatari authorities. Well, I tell you what, if I was there, I wouldn't think it was too amazing. Now they're banning the sale of beer at the ground, despite Budweiser being a sponsor. But you know what? I thought 12 years ago, how on earth could Sepp Blatter and FIFA have chosen Qatar as the place to hold a World Cup? I've long thought that FIFA looks even more corrupt than my friends in Brussels and the European Union. Not that I'm suggesting money changed hands, of course, we can't afford the lawyers' fees, but it was an extraordinary choice, and hence we've got all sorts of rows about human rights, the number of migrant workers that are alleged to have died with the construction, the way that women are treated in that country, and the fact that in terms of gay rights, well, anybody accused and found guilty will face 7 years in prison or perhaps even worse. It was a dreadful choice, but it's happening. We're playing. England's first game against Iran on Monday, followed by the USA next Friday, and the clash against Wales, their first World Cup since 1958, which will take place on the 29th. 51% of the British public in a poll today by Savanta Comres say football and footballers should stay out of political issues, whilst 36% think they should use it as a platform to try to get change in Qatar and the Middle East. My heart tells me I would like sport and politics to be completely separated. My head tells me they never have been. Whether it's Jesse Owens winning 4 gold medals in the Berlin 36 Olympics, whether it is the boycott by most of the 1980 Moscow Olympics following the invasion of Afghanistan, or whether, of course, it's apartheid South Africa being kept out of international sport for many decades. I'm afraid you simply cannot separate the two completely. So I'm going to be debating with my guests sport and politics. And doesn't this put our footballers, the ones that have got to perform on the field, in a very awkward and difficult position? I'll also be asking the question, is football coming home? I want to know what you think. This audience, in their mute response to that, clearly don't share the confidence that I'd like them to have. I'd ask it again, is football coming home? Well, it's been a long time since it did, and we're very, very, very honoured later in the show to be joined by Sir Geoff Hurst, who, of course, just over the road here at Wembley scored that great hat-trick in 1966. Let's begin with David Haig, human rights lawyer, former managing director of Leeds United Football Club. And, David, you are perhaps, I think, the best qualified person in the world to debate all of these topics tonight, because you lived in the Gulf States with a male partner for 10 years. You've got your Leeds Football Club hat on. You've been involved in the game for many, many years. Is it possible to separate sport and politics, in your opinion?
I think the reality where we are now, particularly with influencers and Instagram and social media, and I think, no, it's not. It should be, but it's never going to happen. And whether now or in the future, I think you're seeing that more and more and more. So, no, it's not, unfortunately.
No.
In an ideal world, yes, but no.
It's going to be 40 degrees heat in the middle of the day, and there are some games being played in the middle of the day. Yeah, and no beer to slake the thirst. But how the hell did FIFA choose Qatar?
Well, exactly. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head when we started this. These are not the conversations you want to be having hours before a World Cup, and a World Cup that follows a pandemic. Everybody should be celebrating football, looking forward to that. Instead, we're having conversations like this. But these were foreseeable. These were foreseeable 12 years ago when FIFA did what they did. So everybody's looking at Qatar and other people to blame, but FIFA is where the blame needs to lay. And going forward, like you said, it's happening. The World Cup will happen, the games will be played. We need to make sure that we take lessons from this and things like this don't happen again. And I think that's, if we can take that from what's happening at the moment, that's positive.
Now, Gary Lineker and others have said they're going to wear armbands and give their little protests. What about the players? They're put in a most difficult position, aren't they?
I think it's very difficult because, again, the focus is not on the football at the moment. The focus is, quite rightly, on some areas as well, but it's not on the football. There's an awful lot of pressure. What armbands they're going to wear, what badge they're going to wear, are they going to do this, are they going to say that? Is there going to be a protest? No one's actually really talking about the football.
I know.
And if you pick up a paper, it's all about...
Yeah. But I mean, they chose an Islamic country that has a form of Sharia law. What did they expect? The buzz around the football isn't there, is it? I was talking to the bar staff here earlier on. The buzz just isn't there.
Yeah, there's nothing.
Will it happen when we walk out onto the pitch against Iran on Monday?
I think. Well, we hope so. But then, what's going to happen over there? I think we're going to see a lot more protests. We're going to see a lot more issues. And again, the first game that we've got again is against a Muslim country.
Well, one in which, at the moment, allegedly 15,000 young women have been imprisoned after protesting over the course of the last month or so about these ridiculous dress codes. So, yeah, it is mired in politics and complexity. Despite all of that, David, with your experience at Leeds and in football, how well are this England team going to do?
I mean, putting kind of a fan hat on, I'm very hopeful that it is coming home. But a realistic hat on, I think we'll probably make the semi-finals if we're lucky. But I think you're looking at a South American final between Argentina maybe or Brazil. I think is going to win. But I think we'll do well. But again, the pressure on them and the focus on other things can't be helpful.
But this must be the same for the other teams. I mean, it must be the same for the Brazilian team, the Argentinian team. I mean, they must be having the same debates in their country.
I mean, you would think so, but I think particularly because of England, you're seeing a lot more focus coming from the English press on areas like human rights, on areas like gay rights. There, I don't think you're seeing that. I mean, I don't read Spanish and I haven't seen Argentinian press, but I think there's certainly a lot more focus from England, from us, and particularly on what the players should and shouldn't be doing. And I think that particularly you've got a fairly young squad, it's going to be difficult to deal with.
Yeah, and the last political issue, of course, that cropped up was Black Lives Matter, and we saw the England team taking a knee and being booed by fans. Shouldn't the players be as apolitical as possible?
I think that's an ideal situation.
Yeah.
Particularly, I wouldn't say they're all easily influenced, but you've got a lot of people that are young, might be fairly easily influenced and not as educated as much as they should be in certain areas, like complex areas like human rights. One would hope they stick to the football, but I don't think that will be happening.
No. And would you have a message for FIFA?
Don't do it again. That's the polite message.
I got to say, I nearly said we're before the watershed, but
I mean, all this is their fault, and I think going forward there needs to be reform of football regulation around the world, but also football regulation in the UK. Once the World Cup has been and gone, you still have Newcastle owned by, effectively a ruler of a country who is deemed to have killed a journalist or been involved in the killing. And the same thing when you look at other, Gulf and owned football clubs. That's going to be there when the World Cup finishes. What are we doing about that? What are we doing to make sure that perhaps Liverpool or the next club that comes up for sale doesn't get purchased by a dictator that's sports washing? And I think those are the lessons if we can take those from what's happening now, then there'll be some benefit in what's happening.
One last little thought. Leeds United, the club that you've been so intimately involved in. Brian Clough, famously there, damned, and all the rest of it, the film, the book. He lasted 45 days as manager of Leeds United. Liz Truss lasted 45 days as Prime Minister of this country. David Haig, thank you very much indeed for joining us. We'll be back with you in a couple of minutes' time. We're going to go direct to Doha, and I'm going to put some of the accusations to the supporter of the Qatari regime.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
On Mark Dolan tonight, in My Big Opinion, my first reaction to the Chancellor's autumn statement, and I'm not pulling my punches. As Coronation Street demonised the character critical of woke culture, should soaps stay out of politics? We'll speak to top former head teacher Chris McGovern about the state of Britain's education system. And in my panel, ex-Tory MP Jerry Hayes, the leader of UKIP Neil Hamilton, and entrepreneur Aisling Horgan-Wallace. And my Mark Meets guest is Stephen Pierre Tomlin, the most swiped man on Tinder. We're live at 9.
Well, some of your thoughts on this coming in. Thank you. Brendan says, it doesn't matter who wins this farce of a tournament. Well, I disagree with that, Brendan. I still want us to win, whatever the problems around it. Another viewer says, win or lose, we're on the booze. Pork pies, sausage rolls. Come on, England, give us a goal. I tell you, it was a bit like that around Wembley last July for the final of the Euros. Goodness gracious me. Darryl said, very unlikely we'll win, but you never know, I guess. Someone says, will they get out of the oppressive Qatar alive? Yes, they will. And finally, a viewer says, if it does come home, it will be a tarnished trophy. And that really is perhaps the saddest comment I've heard so far this evening. Now, lots and lots of arguments, lots and lots of rows. One of them surrounds migrant workers. How many migrant workers have died building the facilities for this World Cup? Well, some estimates are that since 2010, up to 6,500 migrant workers have died. Amnesty International put the figure up at 15,000. Either way, the conditions in which workers there have been subjected to are pretty much akin to modern-day slavery. We spoke a week or two back to somebody who'd worked on building the World Cup stadium. This is what he had to say.
Basically, your employer controls every aspect of your life from the moment you wake up to the moment you go back to bed. Like what time you wake up, where you go to work, how you work, what you eat, even if you eat, transportation mode, what you can and cannot do on your days off, if you're lucky enough to have a day off.
Well, we're joined now We're joined now live down the line from Qatar by Zaid Al Hamdam, chairman of the Armacite Group and vice chairman of the Canadian Qatari Business Council, bridging the Middle East and the West. Zaid, thank you very much indeed for joining us. These figures that are being bandied about the number of migrant workers that have died since 2010, the truth of it is the Qatari authorities don't publish any recognisable statistics. When you add up that to a completely different value system to the West, are you surprised at the extent of the row about Qatar being the host for this tournament?
Hello, Nigel. Good evening to you, your audience, and everybody working on the back end of GP Studios. Let me begin by saying that there's been a very vicious, unprecedented attack against the state of Qatar in hosting the World Cup, something that we didn't see with any other country that was hosting this tournament. The figures that were presented initially by The Guardian of having 6,000 deaths was proven as misinformation by multiple bodies, by multiple individuals. And I'm not really asking you and your viewers to listen to Qatari press or Qatari sources. I'd like to direct you to the International Labour Organization, a United Nations body that's stationed in Qatar, that has refuted those numbers. Those numbers have been actually stated to be 3 or 4 deaths. Let me be very clear. 1 death is too much, but accidents do happen. And when we see figures like 6,000, 5,000, these figures were taken over a long period of time for natural deaths, deaths on the road, and they were all attributed to this World Cup.
Well, it's quite a big difference between 3 or 4 deaths and 15,000. Perhaps the entire international community are completely wrong and exaggerating this. And when you talk about a vicious campaign, I guess the truth of it is, the reason this has never happened before is the World Cup has never been held in an Islamic country that has a form of Sharia law. And in the end, I guess the way that you treat the homosexual community, the way that you treat women, that is what the West finds unacceptable, isn't it?
So, Nigel, first and foremost, I really believe that human nature is to either fear or hate what they don't understand. And Qatar and Arabian hospitality, Arabian culture is something that's not understood by many people in the West. And I really was truly looking forward to the World Cup to be an opportunity for people from around the world to experience Arabian culture, to experience Arabian hospitality. There are things about this culture. There are different cultures around the world. If you go to any Qatari household, you knock on the door and you ask to come in and be fed, you will be fed. When you bring up the issue of homosexuality, homosexuality is something that hasn't been very common in the media until recently. So if you look back 100 years, in many countries it was against the law, you'd face death penalties for it. Until today, there are many states in the US, there are countries in the West that frown upon homosexuality. Qatar is a predominantly tribal society, and we have a culture that does not agree with certain values and certain ideologies of the West. I'm not saying that anyone should change their belief for this month, for this tournament, but what I do hope is that when people come and enjoy the football here, they try to take the best and learn about Arabian culture.
Well, no, I understand the argument you're making. Final thought on this. If I'd spent lots of money going out to Qatar,